as I said at the Express Individual of the Year Award, I have this privilege to stand up and talk, I think, on behalf of everybody in this country. We're talking about seeing everyone as individuals and everyone as people. I am like so many people I suspect in the audience here who tried to barricade myself in my home behind 3 layers of burglar proofing, and that didn't work. And I finally decided that I was either going to live like a victim forever or I was going to see what I could do about it. And that's when I went to YTC and taught that first class of teenagers incarcerated for violent armed robbery and murder. That book that came out of that experience, Wishing for Wings, has brought $2.5 million into prison. Not that the book has sold $2.5 million worth of books, but individuals, book clubs, grants, government support, US support. I mean, I get support all over the place for what we do in prisons. And what we do is, or what I do and what the foundation does really, is try to look at everybody as individuals. Let me take you to prison. Let me take you to Port of Spain prison, where I teach young men. By the way, all the young men I teach, I have taught, have been thrown out of school. And they always say, if I had a mother like you, if I would have had a teacher like you, how things would be different. They want somebody to care for them. They want somebody to love them. What we are missing when we don't employ these people and give these people a chance when they come back outside, we are missing the most loyal people I've ever met in Trinidad. I mean, their loyalty is off the charts. We are missing some of the bravest people I've ever met. You have to be very brave and you have to be a survivor to sit in remand for 10 years waiting for your trial to go through the courts, most of which, you know, the young men that I know have been, their cases are thrown out or they won their cases, and yet they will stand beside me for every program that I do, support me, knowing that they're being painted in the media as criminals, even if they're innocent. And you might say, well, everybody says they're innocent, and they do. But I've had one young man who's doing very well outside here right now, and he waited in Port of Spain prison for 4.5 years for his trial to reach magistrate's court. He actually worked for the court system, and he was at a Christmas party when the murder occurred that he was accused of, and there was video of him at the Christmas party. And he had to wait 4.5 years for that case to come up before it was thrown out of court. And these are the types of these are the cases that I hear all the time. We do have a prison that, if we want to call it that, I guess, it's the one prison I haven't been in Trinidad because prisons won't even let me go near it, and that is remand prison, which is often confused somehow with Port of Spain prison because Port of Spain has a lot of remandees in it. But remand prison in Golden Grove, there are actually 3 prisons. Golden Grove Convict Prison, Golden Grove Remand Prison, and Women's Prison. Last year, I introduced barbering classes that combined inmates from Golden Grove Remand and Convict Prison. The grant nearly went back because it took a whole year to get everybody to agree with that. There's a little road, interior road that separates the 2 prisons. And I kept telling the prison system that, you know, I swear that's the Mexican border because it was such a big deal to take them across from remand prison to Golden Grove Prison. But there are no facilities in remand prison for them to do classes or do anything. It's only if I can have them taken over to the Tech Vac building. So originally, I taught a lot of academic classes and found, you know, young men getting out with 4 passes from me and other passes from other people, or maybe coming in with some passes, going back out in society with 9 passes and can't get a job. And I also realized a lot of them had a pile of passes and they're not the kind of people who want to sit in offices. So I started to get grants. I listened, and this is our biggest problem right now. We're not listening. We're not listening to the young people in our schools and what their needs are. We're not listening to the people in prison about what their needs are, and they express very clearly that they want skill-based programs. So I introduced those so that they can go back in society until society can catch up with them and give them a chance. They can go back out there with skills and be their own bosses. So we've done some PVC furniture making, some tiling classes, and the barbering class is the most popular right now. There's, oh, I was going to say something and it slipped my mind. Oh, I want to take that thread back to schools also when I say that we're not listening to schools. There's a lot of schools in this country with, I guess you could categorize in the most challenging schools, and not just in Port of Spain, but out there in other places too, like Canupia and other places. And they say, come and read Wishing for Wings because, you know, we can't get these kids to read. These kids are a behavioral problem and everything. And they put 150 boys in a room, and you can hear a pin drop when I read from that book. And I've had schools like Mukarapo East where the kids have turned around and begged the teachers, can we use this book in class? And the teachers, you know, say, come up to me afterwards, and I get books sponsored for a lot of schools, and say they've never seen them want to read before. And it's because these boys reflect their lives. And I get a lot of support from the U.S. Embassy that gives me money to buy a lot of these books. But my daughter also did, for her master's degree in library science, she did a study in Port of Spain prison about the reading preferences of prisons. And I'm finding this in schools also, in high schools, in secondary schools. In Port of Spain prison, about 97% of inmates said their first preference for literature was nonfiction. Of that, biographies was about 80%. Biographies in history are about 80%, and the rest are what they call books to make us a better person, like self-help books. They want to see role models. They want to see, they love history, any kind of history. And I'm seeing it in secondary schools too, even the history that I read from Making Waves, how the West Indies shaped the United States. They're saying, Miss, are you sure about this? We've never seen this in our history books. They can't see these islands as anything but victims of slavery, colonialism, just victims. And they don't see the power that the West Indies has wielded in North America. I just want to say something about the debates. I mean, I've done everything that I can do, I find, to bridge that gap between you and them, for you to see how these people feel. We have debates that go on in prison, and people can come to those. Those are limited, but we bring them out for debates also. And the attendance has been okay to sometimes poor. And I don't understand it, because this is your opportunity to hear what they think and feel about so many of the issues that define them and define us and end up on the front page of the paper. We've had debates on should people be judged by their religion, and it actually split up between Muslims and Christians, with the Muslims winning it, and they were on the side of yes, people should be judged by their religion. And their arguments are like, they're not the type of arguments that we would ever think of for anything. Their brilliance, their creativity, the most creative people I've ever met. I've met in prison, and we've missed out on that. We've missed out on that loyalty. The only people who are capitalizing on that are the gang leaders. We've had a debate on should parents use corporal punishment, and much to my horror, the side that argued yes won, with a very brilliant question and answer period in which somebody said, well, isn't corporal punishment trying to instill fear in a child? And the guy said yes, but if a child is trying to pull down a pot of boiling water and you talk to him 10 times and he's not listening, don't you want him to feel some fear? And they won for that reason. There was one on cell phones. Should we legalize cell phones? And they came up with a whole brilliant plan of how to have legalized cell phones that the government would run. And I think, you know, the one that stands out the most in my mind, and I can't even remember who won that debate, is the one on are leaders made or born? And the judges came down on both sides very hard, saying, you didn't mention a single Caribbean leader in your debate. And afterwards I said to them, geez, you know, we talk about this every time when we meet. You know, the judges want to see local things. You're good at research, and they want to see local research, and why didn't you do it? And both sides told me, miss, we tried really hard, but we couldn't identify anyone that we thought was a leader in, to make our case. That speaks volumes to me, that they feel that way. I mean, you can sit down there and disagree with it, but that's the way they feel. What else can I tell you? Everybody keeps saying, you know, the murder rate's rising, and it is, and it's going to continue until we start to listen and until we start to until we start to look at these people as people and the problems that they have and the education that they need. Trying to think of any other, one last thing I want to say. We talk all the time about the amount of time that people spend in remand and how awful that is, and it is, because, I mean, I know myself from in Port of Spain prison, you're hurdling rats inside of there. No bathroom facilities, it's paper and bucket, and, but what I find doesn't come up often enough is what this is doing to the appeal process. Because officers actually have to tell inmates sometimes when they come in and say, but I really am innocent and I'm going to appeal. And they are given advice by most people that if you want to appeal, make sure you understand that you may be waiting on remand longer than what it's going to take to serve your sentence. So that to me is very scary, because, I mean, where's our appeal process going if this is the way people have to feel who are innocent in prison? The last thing I want to say is that, like I said, I was just, you know, you all in your houses, and I started with one class in YTC, and if everybody does something, whether it's volunteer in your neighborhood, find an NGO to support, financially or otherwise, if you don't have the time, NGOs need money all the time. All you have to do is one thing. If all of us did one thing, you would be surprised how we could turn this country around. Thank you.